Hey, welcome everyone. This is Colleen Ferrari with Small Business USA, and I am here with Daniel Jordi from Jordico, all the way from Switzerland, to learn some very, very valuable lessons about LinkedIn. So welcome, Daniel.
Thanks, Colleen. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, before we get started, we need you're going to tell about yourself a little better than I will. So tell us what Jordico does and what's your talent, Daniel?
Yeah, so I started that business 3 years ago. Like what Jordico does, essentially, it's a platform for business owners in the training and development industry to help make business more human, to help doing business make more human. Because I believe that in today's business world, in the way we do business, we have lost a lot of the humanity. Like, there's been in the beginning of the century, like today, it's a lot about mass and mass and mass and mass. And, like what Jordico really does, it helps business owners through online programs, through coaching programs, help them do business in a very effective way that is completely unique and authentic to them.
Let's start off by talking about some of the biggest mistakes people make in LinkedIn. Like, let's just go right into this topic. What are the biggest mistakes you see people make with this platform?
Well, there's a couple. Well, like the very basic ones are, I feel like a lot of times people, on LinkedIn, you go on LinkedIn and you see somebody's profile. So a lot of the times people actually see that profile as a profile, but they don't see that profile as a real person. So therefore, they don't put in the time to make it a personal, like, the connection request, to make that personal, or to send, a real message instead of just, sending out hundreds of sales messages like that. But I think a lot of people don't see that there's actually real people behind those profiles. It's like on the LinkedIn Pulse platform, when you publish an article, and, so often I hear people say, oh my God, I only got 200 views on this article. And it's like, do you realize that 200 people read your article? Can you see 200 people in a room reading your article? How does that feel? How is that different from I get 200 views? I feel like that's one of the biggest mistakes, just in perception, that people feel that, it's just the LinkedIn profile there. It's 500 million people or 500 million profiles on LinkedIn, but it's not a whole bunch of real people on a platform talking to each other. That's I feel like that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make.
Okay. How about when connecting? Because I think we were talking a little bit before you jumped on. I mean, and I'll connect with anybody. I'm a pretty open networker, but I don't always have dialogue with everyone. I mean, there's some people that I kind of scratch my head. I was saying, what is the best way to connect? Like, what kind of mistakes do people make there?
Well, with connecting, I feel like one of the biggest mistakes, once again, it goes back to the basics. It's like people don't know why they connect. It's like people never ask the question, like, why do I connect? It's just going out and trying to connect with as many people as possible, because maybe then magically something is going to show up and I'm going to do business, or I'm going to get promoted, or whatever. I'm going to get a new job, or whatever. But that's like hoping something's going to happen at some point just because I do a random bunch of activities. But that's never the case. That's never the case in anything, right? So like essentially when it comes to connecting, it's about, why do I connect? It's the foundation. It's like, why do I connect with that person? Is it like being clear? Is that a potential client I want to, have a conversation with? Is that a potential partner I want to have a conversation with? Is that like, why do I connect? Because you know what I'm talking about. There's so many random people connecting for random purposes. And at the end they have a conversation. And then there's like, hey, it was good to meet you. It's good to talk to people, not have an agenda. That's good. But you have to know for yourself why you're connecting with people. Like, what's your purpose there? And then when it comes to connecting, a lot of people come from this place of getting and wanting. So it's about, I want to get a client. I want that person to follow my whatever. I want this person. I want to get. And because of that, people put themselves in a mindset where they come from a place of desperation. And in that mindset, nothing works. You can't write compelling messages from a place of desperation. So it's really about asking yourself, why do you connect? And then also asking the second question, why should the other person care?
You know, I love what you said, and that point of desperation, you can almost hear it, can't you? Like all of a
Yeah.
sudden you start getting these bulk emails, you start, I mean, you can almost feel it in the energy. And I think there's some people who really leverage it. Like I know some of my team will leverage LinkedIn to just get out there and promote things. I mean, that's just part of what the business is, right? Like Facebook or whatever. But I think LinkedIn offers something so special that other, like you see somebody's profile, you see what's important to them, they put articles out there, you hear their voice, you can really see who they are.
Yeah.
And I'm always amazed, people who really want me to do business with them, and I can flip it from the other side too, because I leverage it to build valuable connections that I do business with. It's my number one tool really to build.
Yeah.
Besides referrals, it's almost where all our business comes from is LinkedIn. And but I think from the other side, you have all this information about Colleen Ferrari and Daniel Jordi right at your fingertips.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why wouldn't you use it before you pick up the phone and call me, or before you connect with me? Or, it is really about a relationship. You wouldn't do that in a networking event or a networking meeting, right? But I think to your point, LinkedIn, people just use it as, it's like, okay, if I connect with 100 people, maybe 5 of them will do business with me. And
well, it's too easy. It's too easy, because at the networking event, if you're at the networking event, you have to show up. People see you. People can reject you. It's so much. There's so much more at stakes. On LinkedIn, it's so easy to click a button and say connect. It's ways too easy, and that's why people, the stakes aren't high enough. I feel that's one of the reasons why it's so, used in the wrong way.
That's interesting. So let's get into our topic. How do you message people on LinkedIn so they actually respond?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest questions I always get. That's like when I ask people, I ask my clients, I ask the people on my list, like, what is the main topic in your head? It's almost always that. It's like, how do I make, like, one of the questions people often ask is, how do I make my message so compelling that the other person just can't say no? How can I make that magic offer? And it's like, the problem with that is, the premise of that is that you only have one chance to make a sale. You only have one chance to make an impression. You only have one chance to book an appointment. But that's not true. It's just simply not true, because if that were true, then every person you met the first time, they would buy from you, right? If that were true. But the premise is wrong. So, what if we, instead of asking that, what if we ask the question of, how can I create so much value for the people in my network that they would want to know more about my work? Because once again, we go back to this foundation of coming from a place of desperation or coming from a place of inspiration. So essentially, the way you do it, you send, first of all, different messages. You get from a place of getting and desperation, you get into a place of inspiration and giving and creating value for people. Because once you put yourself into that mindset, it doesn't become selling. It doesn't become marketing. Like, for example, we talked about people using Facebook and LinkedIn to sell, to promote things. The problem with promoting sales messages is they're not shareable. Nobody wants to share something that's about getting and wanting. But if you come from a place of creation and you create something that's valuable to somebody in your network without that intention of, just because of that message, they are going to become my client, that's how you start to get engagement. That's how you start writing messages that people actually respond to. And then the funny thing is, a lot of people think that, how can I write that incredible message so people respond and people book the appointment with me, and then they try that and they fail? If they move into the other direction and they make it all about, how can I create a lot of value for people, like just reaching out and saying, you're awesome, or thank you. Very often what I've experienced and my clients experience, people reach out to them and say, hey, can we talk? Because you stand out if you do that. So basically, that's how you go about it. And then, more strategically, how you go about it is you move away from this idea, how can I send one message to get to my results, to a place of, how can I, over time, build trust and credibility with that person and build so much of it that they actually reach out to me and want to talk to me. That's always the way I come from. because there's so many things we solve at the same time. You know, it's impossible to reject you that way. You know, the biggest fear of in networking and reaching out to people and selling and everything is rejection. I don't want to be rejected. So that way we eliminate rejection. Because if you let people reach out to you, you inspire them, you create so much value and trust and credibility along the way that they reach out to you, you know, goodbye rejection.
I agree. You know, I have this conversation with business owners often, Daniel, where they're just not patient enough. They think they can write 1 or 2 posts on Pulse, and then all of a sudden they should have this following. And to your point, only like 50 people read it, or 100 people or 200 people read it. And I really challenge them. You have to be patient and you have to be consistent as well. This is just like any social media tool, is that you have to build these relationships over time. You can't just throw something out. And every once in a while it happens. I'm not going to say, I remember writing this post once about, it was like ridiculous. It was like why fat people don't get hired. It was really a deliberate stab in corporate America and some true stories. And immediately it launched this coaching business with people who really wanted to climb the corporate ladder and were worried about their self-image. Every once in a while you have one of these things that really triggers a response from people. But I think the biggest thing that people can do, and business owners especially, is go out there and be authentic. I mean, that article it had a really awful headline, right? I can't remember exactly what the headline was, but it was a story about this man who didn't get promoted because he was too big to fit on the corporate jet. And there was some real concern in the boardroom about this. And it was ludicrous, and I was enraged. And the article was really written from this place of passion and truth and authenticity. I wasn't trying to sell anybody anything. I wasn't out there trying to, all I really wanted people to do was really, they needed to see what the reality was, so they knew what they were overcoming when they went for these job interviews or when they tried to climb the corporate ladder. It resonated with people. It was lucky. Guess what? When you're writing about marketing, there are, I don't know how many marketers are on LinkedIn, Daniel. There's 500 million you people. What did you say?
There's like a whole, there's so many people there. And you just perfectly said, you just made the perfect example. Because when you created that article, first of all, you created it. You came from a place of creation. You didn't create it so that you could get. You created it so you could give.
Right.
You just created it because you couldn't stop yourself, because you had to. It's like when we go out there and we talk about the topics, we cannot hold ourselves back from talking about, because we just feel like we have to talk about this. That's when magic happens, because we automatically are in the right mindset. We don't have to try to put ourselves into the mindset. You just show up there, you're passionate, you're in giving, you're in creating mode. And that's what you did when you create that article. Like when I look back, my article that totally, failed with, a couple of maybe 50 or 200 views or something like that. They were all about, writing a story so that I could make a sale or something like that. But if I went out there and I made a statement, I said, this is the way it is. This is the way the world looks like today. This is the way I want the world to look like. If that's what I wrote about, then, I got thousands and thousands of views. It got featured. It got shared by all kinds of influencers, because you move people. So there's a huge, huge difference between persuading people to do something and inspiring them to do something. If you try to persuade people to do something, you're in that mindset of getting again and wanting. Right. And if you're trying to inspire people to do something, you come from this place of creation and giving again.
So let's talk about small businesses, right? And I think about the marketing industry in particular. I mean, we've had great luck, and I think I am not a great writer, and I think everybody needs to know that. I don't think you have to be a great writer to post something. I think you have to have a message that you're passionate about, right?
Yeah.
There's grammar issues and everything I write. It's just a hot mess. I don't hire anybody to do it. It's just a passionate flow. But I think when you are in a very crowded space, you're in a crowded space with LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I think that you're in, let's have Jordan jump in. I think I'm in a crowded space with business development and with marketing. How do you write something that captures and cuts through all
Yeah.
that noise, I guess is the question.
Well, it's like, there's a lot of people I talk to, a lot of my clients as well, who say, I'm not a writer, so I can't publish on LinkedIn posts. Well, guess what? I'm not a writer. I hated writing at school because there were topics I had to write about. But now I've published like 350 articles over the past 3 years because I love writing about things that I'm passionate about. So the way I do it, like very often, I've had all kinds of different experiences. Like I cannot write if I have to write. And if I try to write about something that I feel like I have to write about, I can't write. But if I just simply tell a story, that's what I do. That's all I do now.
Right.
So like for business owners, especially, this is really powerful. It's a very simple concept that's really powerful for publishing on LinkedIn if you don't feel like you're a writer. There's two things you combine. First, you share a story. Like you ask yourself, what is a lesson that I or one of my clients have learned last week? That's the first question you answer. And the second is, how does that relate to an issue, to a pain that my ideal client has in a situation where they need what I have to offer? Right. And now you put those two together and you write the article, because now it's effortless, because you start with a story. It's just you share something. You share something you experience, one of your clients experience. It's we can all share stories. We don't have to be Stephen King to do that. We can all share stories. And then we can make sure that as the second part, we combine it with that issue in that specific situation. Because when we do that, and then we create a great headline as well, then there's a very high chance that you also get featured on LinkedIn posts, because you're not talking about something very broad, but you talk about an issue that already is happening in people's minds. You
Right.
talk about a question that's already happening in people's minds. And if you do that and you make something like that a headline, it's like people read that headline and they go like, are you reading my mind? I want to know about this. Right? This is really powerful stuff. And that's how you make it effortless.
I have a great business owner who's a member with Small Business USA, and most of his business has come through blogging, and he doesn't use LinkedIn as a main tool. He uses some different ones. But what is fascinating is what he posts, and he posts every single day. What he posts, maybe it's a joke, maybe it's a story of a client that he served. Maybe it could be anything, and it's not long. It breaks every Google rule. It's not 500 words. Sometimes it's a paragraph, sometimes it's longer. But I think what's really valuable about what he's doing is he's allowing people to just look forward to his story. It reinforces what he does, and they learn who he is. And it's his way of building a relationship. And I think one thing that's really, really valuable, and I think it segues into my next conversation with you, is he is really, really, really good at commenting and posting and engaging with other writers. And it really has helped build his business tremendously. Do you want to weigh in on that? Like, what should that look like? Or if you want to build relationships?
Yeah, that's a great way to start building relationships. And, I have, like, when I publish on LinkedIn, there's a couple of people who always share my posts who have a big reach. And it's because I built a relationship with them, because I commented on their post, but I didn't say, hey, thanks, great post. That's, once again, it goes back to when you go out there and you comment on somebody's post, once again, goes back to the foundational question is, why do you comment on somebody's post? Do you want to get their attention? Or do you want to get their attention, right? Is it coming from this place, or is it coming from a place of, hey, this is really something that interests me. It's something that I'm curious about, and I want to add to it. I want to add value to it. And then you're not saying, hey, great post, but you're saying something like, hey, this is a really good point, because I also believe that this and this and this and this. And on the other hand, I also think that da-da-da-da. And now you have a discussion. It's not, you don't comment, but you actually have a discussion now. And it's one of my friends. It's like how one of my friends got on the radar of one of the biggest bloggers in social media, and actually got him to promote his book when he launched it. It was basically on Facebook. He he reached out because the other guy had shared a post about failure. It's like he talked about, hey, it's not about succeeding anymore. It's now about, how big can we fail? And then he basically commented on that and basically said, I don't think that's really the reason why we go out there and start a business. It's not because we want to fail. It's because we want to succeed. So he started this whole discussion, and you could see the thread, going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And then he lives in Switzerland, but he's American. So he flew to New York to give a keynote. He reached out to this guy and he said, hey, I'm in New York. You want to grab a beer? He invited him over to his house. They had a great chat, and then eventually ended up promoting for his book launch. But he didn't reach out to him because he saw him as somebody who could, promote for his book. He knew that he's influential in his market, but that was one reason. But the other reason was because he wanted to have that discussion on this topic. It was genuine. It wasn't fake. It wasn't forced.
So, we talked about more consultants, speakers, people who want to grab big public audiences or grab that B2B business. Is there room on LinkedIn for people who want to grab a more of a customer base? And I think about, some of our clients who own stores and sell products. I think about our own Generating Winners, the website that we fund that's really helping parents with their teens. I mean, we're out there trying to grab that customer base that is not a B2B customer. Is there a different strategy, or is it the same, do you think? So
I would say B2C is probably better for Facebook. B2B is much more better for LinkedIn. My experience is mostly in B2B. I don't have a lot of experience in B2C. My experience is B2B. So I don't know so much about it. Just when it comes to B2C, always also think about, if it's B2C, there's very often the intermediaries, basically the partnerships you can build to reach more of the end customers. So that may be a way for using LinkedIn in a very effective way. So instead of trying to reach the end customers directly, focus on building those partnerships with the, with the intermediaries, with, building partnerships with companies who already serve that market. That's a really powerful way for using LinkedIn in a B2C setting.
I'm going to add on to that a little bit in that B2C setting, because I think there's specialized groups. We do a lot with parenting groups, with Generating Winners, and really connect with parents. And it's the same thing. They're looking for information. We have a boatload of experts, almost 20 experts on that site that deliver, whether they're psychotherapists or social workers or pediatricians or whomever. And they're building their business, leveraging that site. But you have to be present where people can find you. So you think about, this is the worst thing I can think. All I can think of is Dr. Phil right now. It's the only person that comes to mind, right? But if you're reading things about how to overcome depression with your child, then I think that you start building a reputation as somebody who can solve that problem. And if you're very demographically inspired or you can do some coaching over the phone or virtually, I think that's even easier in a LinkedIn environment. But I think, to Daniel, to your point, I think that B2C business needs to be very strategic and leverage joint partnerships. So if you are a health coach reaching out to businesses who are healthcare clubs, yoga studios, dietitians, whatever that is, I think having those strategic relationships that you build through LinkedIn are really important, because you share customers but don't compete against them. I think those are really important relationships that you can build in this setting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about, I see Daniel Jordi's profile on LinkedIn, and you are somebody I absolutely need to meet. I mean, who wouldn't want to meet you, Daniel, right? So what is the best strategy for reaching out to that person and getting Daniel Jordi to respond to you and to start building dialogue?
Yeah, so let me give an example. So I wanted to reach out. Is there an echo? Can you hear that?
I don't hear an echo.
I just hear an echo. I don't know. Oh, no, it's good. Okay, good. So let me give you an example there. So recently I wanted to reach out to a guy. He's based in Australia, and he's building online summits, and he's got an insane amount of influence. He's got a huge reach. He's got an incredible network, and I wanted to meet him because the kind of summits that he did were really something that resonated with me. Really something that resonated with me, and also because of his influence, of course. I wanted to meet him to develop some, future partnerships, and at the same time, I wanted to see if there's any way I could support him. So the way I approached it basically was, I looked at what he's doing. So I started following him first of all, instead of reaching out to him and say, hey, I like what you're doing. Can we talk? Because I knew that would probably, end up in the bin. I first looked at what is he doing? What is he up to? I signed up for his email list. I followed him on social media. I checked out what he's doing. And then this new summit came up. Somebody in this network shared that he's doing a new summit in March. So I checked it out and I was like, great, this is really, really powerful. And then at the same time, I remembered somebody in my network who he didn't have on the speakers list yet, who would be an incredible speaker, who also has a big audience. So I was like, okay, these two guys need to meet. So I reached out to the guy I wanted to reach out to, and I said, hey, I just saw that you're doing the summit, and I just wondered, do you already know this guy? Because he would be the perfect speaker for that summit, because that's what you're talking about. That's actually what he does. That's the main thing. And he said, hey, no, I don't know him yet. Can you please introduce me? And I said, sure. So I made the introduction, and then we chatted, and he was like, hey, I'm doing the summit. Would you be like to be a partner as well? And I said, sure, absolutely. And then yesterday he reached out to me, and he reached out to me for advice to help him on the copy that he sends out to potential partners. So I was able to help him there. So now we're building a relationship. But I don't reach out to him and say, can we talk? Because I would like to get you as a partner on my next launch. It's a very different approach. So that's just an example, and that's what when people reach out to me in that way, of course it's the most natural for me to say, yes, sure, let's have a chat. But it's like so many people reach out and they say, hey, do you have time next week to talk? And I was like, what do you want to talk about? Because it's like, it's not the day only has a certain amount of time, and the more things that you're up to, the less time you have. So there's a lot of value on that time. So that's an example.
I agree. Michael Port does a great segment in his book about reaching out to people blindly and kind of looking at that. And I use the word blindly, cautiously, but about kind of using what you know about them to really form a letter, whether it's for an affiliate partnership or relationship or a joint partner relationship. And he talked particularly from his experience, and he's, growing in popularity. He's got some influence, some major influence out there. And he talked from his personal experience, the letters that he gets. Mm-hmm. And I found it fascinating that even despite all of the influence he had, there were still those letters that kind of got through the gatekeeper and affected him and made him look twice and take pause. And in every situation, it was a letter or a note that really did what you did. It was, even though sometimes they were more direct, mm-hmm. they really took the time to figure out who he was, what was important to him, what his views were, and express that in that note. Hey, this is why, Colleen Ferrari, I want to connect with you because you're really passionate about small business owners, because you're tired of fake consultants, whatever. But they went and looked through that, the information that's available very publicly, what he wrote in his book. And when it was more directed and centered around what he wanted, there was a much higher chance from his perspective, and many, even mine, that absolutely, yeah, that was somebody I wanted to help, right?
Yeah. Once again, it's the same thing. You either come from a place of desperation or inspiration. If you just reach out to getting, it's almost never going to work. Especially the higher up you reach out in the pyramid or in the hierarchy of success or whatever you want to call it, the less this is going to work, because people have their guards up and people have their gatekeepers and everything. And there's a great example on LinkedIn from a startup founder who reached out to the CEO of American Express. And eventually, American Express ended up investing in his venture because of that first connection. And the way, so, reaching out to the CEO of American Express, that's pretty high up in, in the pyramid. So the way he did it was he hit a lot of mental triggers. And essentially the most critical thing he said is, with what we're doing, we're changing the way, something like we're changing the way payment systems work. And I'm not sure American Express is going to be in on this new future. Something like that he said in there. See, he said it much better than I said it now. It's somewhere out there on LinkedIn. If you Google LinkedIn article, American Express CEO or something like that, or outreach message, you're probably going to find it. And he actually has the screenshot of the message. And if you just model something like that, if you can remodel that, that's basically how you get through to anyone on this planet. You got to hit on these triggers, like, the curiosity and all these different triggers.
Is there, so I really want, one of the things that surprised me is that people don't necessarily, they write these, so when they go to connect with me, however that connection happens, whether they connect through a group or whatever, when I actually read it, I miss the messages. I just, when it comes to LinkedIn, I go and there's the invitations and I accept generally, unless, there's just real no connection. I accept, but then I go back and I always check their profile too before I do so. But then I'll go back and I'll send them a quick note because I really do want to know who's on my profile. But what is interesting to me is that whole little letter that people write, if you visit it on LinkedIn, you don't see that.
No, you don't.
It's only if you go in and do that extra step to check your invitation. And some people, I think it's important to, after you connect with someone, to have some other second step of follow through, because there's a lot of people that just hit that yes connect and don't do the extra step I do and go check out your profile and reach out and try to find some time to spend with you. So are there any other little tips that you would give people to just build those one-on-one relationships before we move on?
Yeah, it's so great what you just mentioned. A lot of people just they don't see that little message, so they just accept, and then usually it's in the nirvana. Nobody ever connects anymore with each other because now you're connected, and now the magic is supposed to happen, but of course it doesn't. So like I just created a free video series also where I actually lay this out in the first video. People can check it out at linkedrevolution.com. It's totally free. And essentially what I talk about is like that whole idea usually people have is like send one message and, try to get to the result. Like what I try to do, or what I always do, is I put that sideways into a sequence of messages. So instead of reaching out, sending a connection request and trying to get something from someone, after that connection request happens, you basically have a sequence in place that you walk people through. And that sequence is built on the foundation of giving and creating value. So, just a couple of examples. Let's say I'm a management consultant and I help organizations create a better company culture. So, I reach out to a potential client, or, I get connected to a potential client, something like that. Now, most people just leave it there, or they ask for the appointment. Most of the time it's either one of those. But what actually the most effective way is you put a sequence in place that creates lots of trust and credibility. So in my example, if I'm that management coach, then what I could do as the first thing is I could send that person a thank you message and say, hey, great connecting. I love what you do because it really, turns the financial market upside down. It creates a lot of new opportunities for small businesses. And by the way, I just released a case study on how company X created a thriving people-first company culture. You can check it out, send it to you as an attachment if you're interested. Now, you haven't sold them anything. You sent them a case study. Maybe it was your own client. Maybe it's, just a company that you created a case study on. But now it gets them thinking about this whole idea of company culture. And if they're in that situation where they are, working on their company culture, it helps them tremendously. And even if they're not thinking about creating a more thriving company culture yet, it sparks that why of, hey, maybe I should think about that. And then in the second sequence, you could share an article with them and say, hey, I just published this article. Maybe 5 days later, you say, hey, I hope you enjoyed the case study. I just published an article on this topic, hope it resonates with you. Make it relevant to them, make the message personal, of course. And then the third message could be, like, you send them a link to a tool. By the way, if you feel and check how toxic or thriving your company culture is, here's a 5-minute assessment to find that out. And then after that, maybe after 10 or 14 days, we send them a message and say, hey, I hope you got some great value out of the resources I share with you. How about we jump on a call, because I'd love to learn more about you and what you're up to, and if there's any way I can support you. I mean, just compare that to, connecting with somebody and saying, hey, can we talk?
Right.
I mean, it's like day and night, right?
What's really interesting is I've always found that when you offer to learn more about the other person, that's really when the odds of getting a response really come up. I mean, one of my most common questions I ask is, hey, I'd love to spend some time with you and get to know more about your business. I mean, and it's really true. And I may be assessing them as a member of Small Business USA. I may be assessing them as a coaching client for someone or something. I mean, you just don't know. It's funny because, my whole background has been in corporate America. And one of the most enjoyable pieces of my entire career has been helping people get promoted and climb the corporate ladder. And we do a lot with, Yes, You Can Have It All, and our program that we run for business owners and for corporate citizens, right? But one of the most underutilized tools for even in corporate America is LinkedIn. I mean, it used to be that tool when I was in corporate America. If I saw somebody connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm like, oh crap, they need a job, right? And it's so changed. It is a place where recruiters use these tools to really learn about you as a corporate citizen and what you stand for. But it's also a tool that you can use to self-promote yourself. So for anybody who joins us who's not in that small business space, I think that's a very valuable message as well. LinkedIn isn't just for business. It is, if you are a B2B business owner, though, you need to be on LinkedIn.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. Absolutely.
It's absolutely the best space to be.
Absolutely. No, I so much agree. Also when you talked about B2C before, I mean, LinkedIn is an incredibly powerful platform to establish yourself as a thought leader, as an authority in your field. Because if you start putting yourself, and that doesn't matter if you're the vice president at some company, it doesn't matter if you have your own business. I mean, in the world that we're living today, if you don't work on establishing yourself as a thought leader, as an expert, as, positioning yourself, then, there's not really a great future in terms of career or business or anything today, because that's like where everything is going. So LinkedIn is incredibly powerful for that, because you can publish on LinkedIn polls and, they can pick it up and feature it. And you can essentially express yourself. And that's the key thing there. You can be authentic and express yourself in a big way. You can talk about the things you're passionate about. You can talk about, the way you want to see the world, or the way you see the world, or the way you want to the world to be, in the future. It's very powerful.
So here's my takeaways so far. One, be personal and really make sure that you're really paying attention to who you're talking about. Build relationships. Take your time. The second thing I heard today was be authentic. What you post should be that passion that's pouring out of you that is giving, right? And not with any ulterior motive. And those are the most effective. Oh my God, I just totally had a brain freeze. I was paying attention, Daniel. Making sure that you take the time to learn about other people. Be strategic was one of the things I heard. Making sure that you're not just going after one conversation, but you have a strategic plan about how to connect with people and what that path might look like. What did I miss?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, essentially, I feel like, I always look for the one thing that changes everything. I'm big on leverage. So I always look for that one screw that if we can turn that 45 degrees, then it changes everything. And that screw is essentially the mindset. So if you go out there on LinkedIn and, you make your relationship building strategy about what can I do for this person? How can I create value? How can I create value by giving for people in my network, even if that's the only strategy you have for connecting, then you're going to be successful, because getting clients is actually not a goal. Because if it is a goal, you come from a place of getting. But if you make getting clients a side effect, a result of something, then you can put yourself in this mindset of creating value, so that at some point, I can create those clients. So I think that's a really important part.
Hey, I'm going to go to Brian Short has a question. Thank you, Brian. What are strategic ways to use LinkedIn updates and LinkedIn publishing?
So I'm not sure what he means about strategic ways, but like when it comes to the updates, like one of the things that I've used on LinkedIn is share picture quotes, and they work incredibly well. So one of the things I often share is I share quotes from Simon Sinek, but I don't share them in text form. But I actually have my assistant create a picture quote out of the quote and then share it on LinkedIn. And they often get 50 to 60 likes and comments and tons of shares. And now just recently, what I started is I started creating my own picture quotes. So I share a mix between different people's quotes and my own quotes, and that's a great way for expanding your network as well. Because when you share something and somebody likes that thing that you share in your network, people in their network see that they liked it. And the same thing happens with commenting and sharing, of course. So that's an incredibly way to get more exposure, to get more reach. And the same thing with with LinkedIn publishing. When somebody likes or shares that, it goes into their network.
I love that. I will tell you that I use the LinkedIn updates pretty strategically, actually. That's my favorite part of LinkedIn. I love the notification and updates, and I go through and I kind of work that little, I don't know how bad that is, but it tells me who important in my network is writing something and that I want to pay attention to. So it helps me build those relationships. So I check that section more than I ever check my messages. And, your messages fill up, but for me, that notification is so important, because I can see if Daniel Jordi posted something, I can go and I can just go click on that and I can read through it really quick and I can make a comment, and Daniel knows that I'm supporting him. And if it's great, I'm going to share it, and it allows me to have conversation. It also tells me when somebody has commented on something I've written. And so for me, that becomes a very strategic tool that I can now go and say, wow, Daniel really liked what I wrote and he put a comment in there and this is great. And now I can personally start a dialogue, and it becomes more than just somebody who read one of my posts. It becomes a conversation with somebody who you don't ever know where that's going to go. That notification piece is one of my favorite tools in LinkedIn.
Yeah, right? That's a good point. I like that.
I love the questions. Does anybody else have any questions for Daniel? If you do, it's just in case nobody knows, it's /Q in front of your question, and it'll post it like Brian did. How about Slideshare? Do you use Slideshare often?
Not really, no. I don't use it. Do you use it?
I have used it a couple times. I'm not super proficient in it, and it's just because it takes me a lot of time and I don't feel comfortable delegating it yet. But what is interesting to me, and especially I think if you're in that personal coaching space or leadership coaching space, I know that is gaining a lot of popularity in corporate America. So if you're selling your services in that corporate sphere, with Small Business USA, we've created our own board. So I think that corporate America kind of leads small business to a degree. What happens, conversations that happen in corporate America bleed down into small business, and it takes us a little longer. So I really like to connect those two quicker. So members of our board are in corporate America, and I think it's really important. And what I'm hearing from these folks is that there is a huge movement for businesses are saying, hey, go to LinkedIn and see what you can find out. And when you do a search on LinkedIn, that's where it brings you a SlideShare. So if you want to be this authority on something people are searching, that seems to be the place to do that, more so than Pulse.
Yeah, that's a great way to create, once again, to create some more content. Because, once again, you can give people something, they can get it for free. Maybe they're looking for, I don't know, some information or some help with X. So you create a SlideShare presentation on this, and they can go through it. And, if you make it so epic that they want to know more about your work, well, that's exactly what the whole purpose of this is.
I love, just a little aside, I love Blab, right? And I love every time that we see new users, and there's, Scott. Thank you, Scott. I'm like applauding Scott is a master of Blab. We have kind of, I think we joined at about the same time, and we kind of battle back and forth about who's better at it. He is, but I'll tell him I am. No, but it's such an amazing tool for us. But I love it because you just don't know where people are coming from or what they're doing. And I personally love it because we used to record these privately and then post them on iTunes and post them on our website and our expert page. And this kind of does all the work for us. So all we have to do is take our links and
absolutely,
connect. It saves us a few steps, and it's a fun format, right? It's easy.
Yeah, I just recently learned about it, and I love it too. Yeah.
I love when we have someone new on it, though, I guess is my point. We just had Sigro, who just joined us, and I just always love that because it just says, we're growing. This is one of these tools that's growing. And I'm not a big Periscope person because I don't like to talk to myself and hear myself talk. I much rather hear Daniel Jordico.
Yeah.
All right.
There's another question. Any advice on best way to use LinkedIn groups? From Brian. So like the way I use LinkedIn groups, there's like two ways I use LinkedIn groups, and I advise my clients to use LinkedIn groups. First of all, it's have my own. Like create your own LinkedIn group, because the instant you create a group on LinkedIn and the instant, the first person joins, you become the leader of this tribe. So you instantly become a leader as soon as you create that. Right. So, and then you can start inviting people from your network. You can start inviting new people. You join your network. You can even have a call to action at the end of your articles for people to join your group, and then, start the cycle from there. So that's a really powerful way to use LinkedIn groups, because I like to be proactive in everything. So creating your own group is taking the initiative. And then there's a great way for leveraging other groups. That the way I use them is I share my articles in other LinkedIn groups, and I make it very specific. So I don't just share it like there's, so many people just share it and spam it and spam the groups and everything. The way I do it is I pick specific groups that I really resonate with, and I start a discussion with, an engaging, sometimes provocative title that really, really engages people. And then I also attach my article to it that is relevant to that, to the group and also to that discussion. And a lot of the group owners appreciate that, because like what they're looking for is engagement. They're looking for engaging discussions. And if you create that engagement, then they're more than happy to let you post that link and post that article as well. So that's two ways I use it.
I think the holy grail for me as a group leader is figuring out, and we run a few groups, but I think the holy grail is figuring out, how do you form that engagement? Like, how do you create that sense of community in these environments? Not people that just want information, but that real true engagement. We have a group for the women on the call called Steel Heels. And that's a fun group. It's for women business. We kind of got tired of women who were just worried about image and lipstick. And we really wanted a group that really talked about the tough pieces of business and how to kind of lean in and climb up. But there's also, I think that group does the best job of engaging, but any advice you have on how to get these groups to engage, whether it's through the content that's delivered, I think you're absolutely right, Daniel. It is the holy grail of being a group leader.
Well, absolutely agree. And like what I figured out over the years is like, so there's a million LinkedIn groups out there, right? Most are crap. Most are useless. They're just full of spammers, and they create zero value. So when it comes to LinkedIn groups, the way to avoid that is to not just make another LinkedIn group. Just, once again, it goes back, I like getting back to the basics. Goes back to the basics. Why do you create that LinkedIn group? If you create that LinkedIn group just for the sake of getting clients, it's gonna be what it is, a group of people who have not really much in common with and be able to talk with each other. But if you make the group about something bigger than yourself, if you make the group about your mission, and then like the holy grail of that is if you can make the group about like a higher mission that you share with your ideal clients, now you have a community. Because now if you do that, you don't have a LinkedIn group, but you have a tribe. Because you give the tribe, you give the group a purpose, a higher purpose that connects you and your ideal clients in the group. And now you can talk about something that is not just, hey, here's my advice on X, Y, Z, but now you can share things and they can share things, and it's everything combined under one roof of that shared mission. That's what I found the holy grail of engagement, and also of making building such a group effortless, because you just step in there and you share to give and to create, and then it becomes effortless and it's not forced.
I'm going to hit that from the other side as well, because I think it's really important to leverage groups as a business owner, especially. We spend a lot of time talking about how do you leverage all these different groups you belong to. First of all, there are so many groups on LinkedIn. I mean, I have not any idea like how endless this list is, but it's a great way to find people who have exactly the same interests as you. And I think that's really important. So Brian Short, I don't know if anybody knows him on the call, but Brian owns Avon Sewing Loft, and they do custom draperies and curtains and really great things. So this is a great way for Brian to go into some of these interior decorating sites and start building relationships with some of these groups, with people who are going to fuel your industry, where you can share ideas, where you can talk about new products, where you can build relationships that are, I mean, it's so nice that as a member of that group, once you're in, you can go in and see those members, connect with them, message them. And I think some of those conversations, like from earlier on in the call that Daniel was talking about, nurturing some of those relationships and conversations are exactly where you want to be. These people kind of are in that same mindset, so reach out to them. So whether you use a group or build one, I think it's both. They're both valuable tools.
Absolutely.
Great question. Great question. Any other questions before we wrap up? And how do you create? Oops. Okay. How do you create an effective original bio and self-description? Now, what's not going to come up? I don't know why. Oh, the backslash is the wrong way. It's /. But how do you create an effective original bio and self-description? Go ahead, Daniel. I'll let you take that one.
So I guess that relates to the LinkedIn profile summary, like talking about it in there. So that's an interesting question. I get that a lot. The problem is if you try to write a bio, it's a pretty empty space. It's like, oh my God, if you're trying to figure out how to write a bio, you're sort of in this place of non-empowerment. You try figuring out, but because you can't, you can't move forward or anything. So forget about that. Forget about writing a bio, right? And then start writing a piece of content. Start writing an article about something you're incredibly passionate about. Start writing maybe one article, maybe a couple of articles. And then look at these articles that you've written. Look at that content and go through it. That's what I always do with my clients. We write the articles first before we write the summary, because when we go through the articles, we have golden nuggets that we can take and put them into the summary. Because the summary is not, if the summary is about, here's what I accomplished, here's why I'm so great, it's not a very effective summary. When I talk about an effective summary, it's essentially following the structure of, Simon Sinek talk about why and then how and then what. So always start with why, And starting with why is basically talking about your beliefs, talking about your vision, talking about your mission, talking about why you do what you do. And then if you first talk about that, that's really hard if you just think about writing a summary. That's hard to come up with. But that's something you can take from an article and add it to that. And then you can talk about how you work with your clients, how you help other businesses or something like that, and then what you do. But that first piece, actually the most effective piece of an entire bio and everything, that's so much easier to create or to take from a piece of content that you write.
You know, I'm going to add on to that. And I just put a woman's name who is so gifted at this. And she's really, it's really her passion. She is really great at creating that bio and understands the nuances of how it works. But Sandra Long, hey, Zeph, Sandra Long from Post Road Consulting, you know, reach out to her if you need help building that bio, because there are those pieces that you want to be found too. So you want to go into that, you know, if somebody's looking for a business consultant who specializes in, you know, widgets or whatever, you want to be able to go on into that search engine and type that in and be that person that's found. So I think that Daniel is so accurate. I mean, you have to create a bio that really reflects you and that is so true to who you are and makes and differentiates you. I mean, we talk about a lot of that in our marketing program, right? Our members know that. Like we talked, the first month that you spend with Small Business USA is about really helping you focus on differentiating yourself. Well, I've got to tell you, especially like if you're in one of these really highly governed type of environments, like financial planning, you're not allowed to have a website. This becomes your website and your bio. What you put on here absolutely differentiates you. So I think it really becomes very, very important. It becomes your calling card and the way that most business owners kind of come to find you first, right? But there are some pieces like, you know, if you're a business consultant, the word business consultant better be in your bio a few times. If you focus on marketing, that word, you know, some of these keywords are really important to getting you found. Mm-hmm. And if you're looking at it as a tool to help grow your career and you're in corporate America, well, if you're an interior designer, bad use. I have Brian Short in my mind, but so like I think Scott was just saying, a lawyer, right? So if you're an attorney and you specialize in divorce, well, those words need to be present throughout your location, and those words need to be present throughout your bio. So that's, you know, I think you have to combine what Daniel said with some of the algorithm of LinkedIn to really perfect that talent. That's, for me, I think that's worth having somebody do for you if you want to be found through LinkedIn. I don't know. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely agree. You know, you always got to have both. Unfortunately, most people just start with the what stuff, you know, that's what I do, that's what I do, that's what I do. And, you know, only very few people, or I've seen there's only a small percentage of people who actually starts with why. This is why I do what I do. And, right. You know, it's got to be both parts. I mean, because if you have to put head and heart together, you know, that's very important. True. Because if, you know, separately they're okay, but they don't work so well just by being by themselves.
Agree. Gosh, Daniel, you don't do that, do you? I don't think you do that. You don't write bios for people.
No, I don't write bios.
Navigate it, and you're more the marketing end of LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, I'm the guy when it comes to the more advanced stuff, like, you know, putting up sequences for putting up these trust building sequences, I essentially putting LinkedIn into a system, into a framework that works for you. That's what I do with people.
So I can't even believe a whole hour has gone already. I just want to wrap up, but I want to make sure, Daniel, that people know how to get a hold of you, and we put your contact information over in the corner.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
Yeah, why don't you tell people how to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so the best way to reach me is at my main website is jordico.com. So jordico.com. That's the best way to reach me. Or on LinkedIn, of course. You can find me on the Daniel Jordi. You should find me with the picture. And then, you know, if that topic is something important for you, the LinkedIn topic, then check out linkedrevolution.com, which is leads you to that free video training, and that's essentially what I talked about today with the sequences and everything. It's very, very powerful stuff. That's where people can reach me. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on the call. I put our website, Small Business US. I don't know why CT comes up there. We've tried to change it 1,000 times. It's not our handle. It's at Small Biz US USA. It's like the craziest thing that Blab has done to us. At least our icon is right? But our website is Small Business US. Those who are watching it live from our website, thank you so much for joining us. Members, we love you, of course, and thank you for joining us. And please reach out to us. You can reach out to me at Colleen@smallbusinessus.com or Colleen Ferrari on LinkedIn. And I am just so happy to have you here, Daniel. I think the conversation was great, and it really helped people understand how it works and the backstory of LinkedIn and how to really make a difference with it. So
thank you for having me.
Yeah, I think I'm going to just say one thing that you left me with, that I will never look at LinkedIn again the same. From now on, it will always be a room of people. It will never be an email address.
Yeah, that's a big mental change.
Yeah.
Awesome. Love that.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Colleen.
Have a great evening, and everyone, here's to your success. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks. Take care.